in his career, Peyton Manning, in the postseason, is 9-11 as a professional quarterback in the postseason. If you include the one year where his Indianapolis Colts go to the Super Bowl and win it, he's been to playoffs 12 times in his career. 8 of those times, his team has not gone past their first playoff game. Either lost in the wild card round or had the bye in the first round of the playoffs and lost in the divisional round. But Peyton Manning has been to the playoffs 12 times in his career. 8 of those times, he has not advanced past that first playoff game. Been one and done. 8 times out of 12 years. There's an article I saw earlier today with some research that was done by a guy named Scott Kaczmar, looking at those 8 losses. And basically the conclusion that he came to, and if you really look at Peyton Manning's playoff successes and failures, and there have been more failures than there have been successes, but if you really look at them, Peyton Manning, to call him a choker and to say, well, you know what, he just doesn't get it done. He just doesn't get it done in the crunch. It's lazy, is all it is. Because if you look at what Peyton Manning has done in the playoffs, specifically in those 8 games, in those 8 years where he lost the first playoff game that he played that season, if you look at what he has done in those games, then you cannot say that he doesn't show up in the big time. Because look at some of the stuff that's happened to him in those games. All right. He has thrown 6 interceptions in those 8 games that his team lost the first playoff game, be it wild card game or divisional round game, whichever was their first game. Then they lost it, and they've done it 8 times in Peyton Manning's career. He's thrown 6 interceptions. 3 of those interceptions have gone off of his receiver's hands. 3 of the 6 interceptions he's thrown in those 8 one-and-done games went off of his wide receiver's hands. That's not Peyton Manning's fault. It's not his job to catch the ball. It's his job to throw it where it is catchable. And over the course of his 15-year career, he's been one of the best we've ever seen at doing just that, putting the ball where his receivers can catch it. He threw 6 interceptions in those 8 one-and-done games. 3 of them went off the hands of his wide receivers. There's nothing he can do about that. Also, 2 of those losses, 2 of those 8 losses, those one-and-done losses, featured his kicker, Mike Vanderjagt, missing a kick on the team's last possession. Both of those happened when he was with the Indianapolis Colts. Twice, Peyton Manning, in those one-and-done games, saw his kicker miss a kick on the Colts' final possession to either win the game or tie the game. And his kicker missed. And this is when we conveniently forget, when we're talking about quarterbacking legacies, this is when we conveniently forget that Tom Brady, 2 of Tom Brady's 3 Super Bowls came down to Adam Vinatieri making a kick at the end of the game. If Adam Vinatieri misses those 2 field goals, what are we saying today about Tom Brady? Because if the Patriots are going to lose those games, he has the same number of rings as Peyton Manning. The exact same number. So what do we say about Tom Brady if Adam Vinatieri hadn't made those 2 kicks? What are we saying about Peyton Manning if Mike Vanderjagt makes those 2 kicks? This is when we judge quarterbacks on this ridiculous notion of they are independent of the rest of the team when it comes to playoff wins and losses. It's just a dumb way to look at it. No one would ever say the same thing about a running back. No one would ever say, well, Ray Rice didn't win enough games as a running back. Ray Rice is not a separate entity from the other 52 guys on his roster in those playoff games. He's just one part. Peyton Manning's just one part. His team put up 35 points last night in regulation at home in January in the cold. That should be enough. It just should. They put up 35 points at home, and the defense let him down. Yes, that the final throw that he made in overtime was horrendous. It was a terrible pass. And he admitted as much after the game. It was a horrible pass. But it never should have come down to that. And this is the big point, that when you really look at this, you cannot say that Peyton Manning doesn't get it done in these games. In the 8 times he has lost in his first playoff game of the season, 4 of those times, his team has led the football game with less than 40 seconds to go. In 4 of Peyton Manning's 8 losses, of his 8 one-and-done losses in his career, his team has led the game with less than 40 seconds left. That's not on him. It doesn't matter how you twist that around, and that's not on Peyton Manning. He can't play defense. He has done exactly what you want your quarterback to do in the postseason. Put us in position to win the game. He does that. Whether the rest of his team can come through and do their part, that's not on him. That's not on him. Tom Brady couldn't control if Adam Vinatieri made those kicks in the Super Bowl. He could just put him in position to make them. And he did that. Peyton Manning can't control whether his defense can stop the Baltimore Ravens from scoring with 35 seconds left in the ball game. But he put them in a position to where if they did, then the Broncos are going to the AFC Championship game. But guess what? Defense let him down. But you cannot look at Peyton Manning's postseason career and say, well, you know what, he just doesn't show up. That's what happens. You know, the moment gets too big for him. Please. 4 times of those 8 losses, he's given his team a lead with less than 40 seconds to go and said, there, guys, stop them. And his defense couldn't. That's not Peyton Manning's fault. Quarterbacks are not independent from the rest of their football team. That's just not the way it works. The guys on defense are paid to stop the other team. The guys on offense are paid to score points. You look at what Peyton Manning's done in his career, he's living up to his end of the bargain more times than not. If he wins those 4 games even, those 4 games out of the 8 one-and-done losses he's had in his career, if he wins those 4 games where his team had a lead with under 40 seconds to go, even if every single year they had lost the next game, 3 times with the Colts and now with the Broncos, even if his team had lost the next week every single year, he'd be 13-11 right now in the postseason. What would you say about him then? Would you call him a choke artist? No. Would you say that the stage is too big for him? No. He would have won 13 playoff games. Tom Brady just set the record with 17. Winning in the playoffs is hard. It's hard to do. Peyton Manning is arguably one of the best quarterbacks ever. And he's got 1 Super Bowl ring. You know why? Because the NFL is hard. It's a difficult league to play in. Everyone's good. Everybody that's left is good at this point in the year. Everyone that makes the playoffs is a good team. Peyton Manning is doing his job. And this idea, I mean, especially this year, say, well, he just doesn't come up big enough. Are you kidding me? There were people at the beginning of the year that didn't think the guy would be able to throw a 10-yard out route. He threw 37 touchdowns this season. 37 touchdowns with a neck that's been sliced open 4 different times. If you call him a choker, if you say that he just doesn't come up big, you're just being lazy. That's all it is. Because you're not looking at what he does overall as a quarterback. And that's a shame. Because quarterbacks are not independent of the team. And sometimes they need help. Tom Brady, in his postseason career, he's gotten help. Peyton Manning has not.